Thanks very much for staying with us. Time now for Eye on Africa with me, Georgia Calvin-Smith. Tonight, opposition parties in the Ethiopian region, where local fighters have been pitted against federal forces since November, say that they're on the brink of a humanitarian disaster of biblical proportions. Their claims that are hard to verify, that more than 50,000 civilians have been killed. Also, getting official ID papers in Cameroon is notoriously difficult. It's hard to get around without an ID card or passport. The red tape involved has left many applicants in despair. And the first commercial flight since 2012 arrives in Timbuktu. A jihadist invasion stopped air travel to the Malian city, but the 800-kilometre trip from the capital is now safer and faster. But first, 3 opposition parties in Tigray, northern Ethiopia, accuse the government of using hunger as a weapon and claim that more than 50,000 people have been killed in the months of fighting between federal troops and local forces in the region. It's still not clear what the estimate is based on. There have been no official death tolls since battling began in November, and communication links to Tigray remain patchy. The parties are calling for an independent investigation into the violence. Mikawa Shachwayu brings us more.
Aid workers have described the conflict in Ethiopia's region of Tigray as a humanitarian disaster. Since government military operations began in November, thousands of people have been killed and hundreds of thousands have been forced to flee their homes. 3 opposition parties have now accused the government of Ethiopia of using hunger as a weapon. They say that cattle have been killed, crops burnt, homes destroyed, and that 50,000 people have been killed since the conflict began. Information has been difficult to verify as journalists and aid workers have been largely blocked from accessing Tigray. However, rights groups have reported widespread killing of civilians, destruction of property, and most recently reports of rape where women and girls within the region of Tigray have been targeted. Government forces have been fighting the Tigrayan People's Liberation Front, or TPLF, which previously dominated Ethiopia's politics and military for nearly 30 years, until Prime Minister Abiy took over 3 years ago. Abiy declared victory against the TPLF in late November. His government said earlier this month that most TPLF leaders had been killed in the conflict. But the TPLF's leader, Debretsion Gebremichael, spoke publicly for the first time in months in an audio recording released 3 days ago. He said that there would be extended resistance against government forces and accused them of bombing cities and villages. The head of the UN's refugee agency has described the situation as extremely grave and has called for an independent and transparent investigation into the alleged abuses.
Mikawa Shachwayu, our regional correspondent. Now, as many African states move forward in plans to source COVID-19 vaccines, Tanzania says it's not preparing to roll out any inoculation campaign. Its health minister insists that the country is safe. Tanzania has been criticized for its approach and hasn't released official infection figures since last April. The WHO has been trying to get the country to be more transparent with that kind of data. The Catholic Church, meanwhile, has been urging people in the country to take the risks more seriously and said that it had noticed a spike in funerals that it fears may be linked to fatal coronavirus cases. Now, it's an uphill battle, as even the country's president has been reluctant to take the customary precautions.
I asked the health ministry not to take vaccines from abroad without the certification of our health authorities. In this time of pandemic, many countries have imposed lockdowns on their people. But Tanzania is not in lockdown. And I will never lock down my people, because our God is alive. He will guide us, and we will be more cautious.
Well, Uganda said it's hoping to reopen schools a year after they were first closed because of the pandemic. Final year students are due back first, with younger pupils facing a staggered return to class from about April the 6th. Preschools will stay shut and universities would also open up in phases. The government's also hoping to start immunizing essential workers soon and announce the purchase of 18 million vaccine doses on Tuesday. It's not clear, though, when they'll be delivered. Most of the 60,000 Moroccans who usually head off overseas for studies every year have had their lives put on hold because of coronavirus. Many who have returned home to wait it out are finding the uncertainty hard, as our correspondents report.
Like every day since the start of the pandemic, Hind has been waiting for the return of visas to do an internship in the US. Newly graduated in medicine, she thought she would already be doing her specialization. Today, she's still waiting.
It's a lot of wasted time. 1 year for a student or for a recently graduated medical student is a lot. The later you wait for your diploma, the less chance you have of being accepted into specialization. Psychologically, it's a huge blow. It shakes you completely. You lose control, you don't have any visibility on your future. It's a lot of time wasted, lots of effort, and lots of frustration.
While waiting to restart her studies overseas, Afra, who dreams of working in international trade, has decided to follow an online course in business management. Before, Afra was studying in China, in Wuhan, but she was repatriated at the start of the pandemic. Returning to her family, she found it difficult to follow her lessons online.
It wasn't at all easy, given the time difference, adapting to the platforms required. But I was able to manage last year, and now I'm just waiting for the day when the borders open so I can return. I miss life over there a lot. I really miss my friends. I was meant to be there for 4 years, so coming back was very demotivating.
Impatient to restart her life, like thousands of other students.
Well, getting official ID papers in Cameroon is notoriously difficult. It's hard to get around without an ID or passport, but the red tape involved in the bureaucratic process has left many applicants in despair. Our team reports.
A long wait that will bear no fruit for many Cameroonians at this police station in downtown Yaoundé. They've come to apply for or collect their national identity card, but many will leave empty-handed. This is one of the 280 identification centers in the country. Many people have made official appointments, only to be turned away when that day arrives. Those who manage to get the precious card celebrate after their long wait.
Voilà ma carte d'identité que je viens de retirer après un long entente de plus d'1 an. Bon, ce n'est qu'un sentiment de joie.
Despite the difficulties in getting an identity card in Cameroon, the process has recently speeded up a bit, but distribution remains slow. Police say the health crisis has prevented people from collecting them. Unconvincing arguments according to Anne Fekund Bilowa. Every day she gets complaints from thousands of citizens such as this young girl. She has not received an identity card she applied for 8 years ago. Hearing such testimonies prompted the politician to launch the I Want My ID Card initiative. Her movement has gone viral on social media.
La finalité, c'est que la police mette en place des automatismes pour résoudre la crise de la CNI. Les citoyens n'ont pas à négocier, à supplier pour un document aussi banal.
The process of getting a Cameroonian passport, another important identification document, is also stressful and unpredictable. Some prefer to risk turning to the black market. Using a hidden camera, we pose as a potential client to meet with this middleman. He promises to speed up the process and provide authentic documents at a high cost. 450,000 CFA francs, nearly 700 euros, 6 times the official price, but some see it as a cost worth paying to bypass the fiscal and official process.
Well, this week, Timbuktu welcomed its first commercial flight in almost a decade. They were stopped in 2012 when the Malian city was captured by jihadists. The country's still destabilised by extremist attacks and inter-ethnic clashes, but the new airlink is a welcome step forward. Norbert Stecker has more.
A triumphant landing for the first commercial flight to arrive in Timbuktu in over 9 years. For the freshly founded Sky Mali airline, reconnecting the pearl of the desert to the rest of the country was a long-standing ambition.
Lorsque nous avons lancé cette compagnie, nous avons vu la réponse immédiate de la clientèle. Il n'est pas normal que le Mali ne soit doté d'un instrument aérien qui puisse renforcer son intégration.
In 2012, Timbuktu was overrun by fundamentalist groups with links to Al-Qaeda as Mali faced a widespread jihadist insurrection. Malian and French forces liberated the city a year later, but weren't able to rid the region of a flurry of militant groups which have continued to carry out bloody attacks in the country's north. This left Timbuktu almost completely cut off from the rest of Mali, with the 20-hour drive from Bamako a perilous journey fraught with potential attacks. Now the 800-kilometer trip has become much safer and only takes 2 hours.
Arrivé dans de bonnes conditions dans un Boeing 737-500 de 116 places et de 12 places premières. Franchement, ça s'est très très bien passé.
The potential of this new route wasn't lost on Malian authorities, which sent 2 ministers to take part in the inaugural flight. There were hopes the Bamako-Timbuktu connection could help kickstart tourism, an industry that's all but disappeared in Mali over the past 10 years.
Well, that's it for Eye on Africa. Thanks for joining us. Do so again if you can. Take care.
Here at France 24, we're taking a broad outlook by talking about the women who are reshaping our world.
En France 24 en español no tenemos temas vedados. Y eso se puede ver en televisión y en todas las plataformas que tenemos en Internet.
في فرنسا 24 لا ننسى ونحجز لكم أسبوعياً تذكرة عودة للمدن والمناطق التي كانت في قلب الأحداث قبل أن تدخل في طي النسيان.
Claro que tiene algo especial. Somos todos de distintos países y trabajamos con todo el corazón para entregar información en el momento preciso.
أخبار سياسية واقتصادية وثقافية وأيضاً رياضية بأعين خبراء رياضيين. هذه هي قناة France 24.
Liberté, égalité, actualité.